Hi, you are live with Lila and
Tiffany Beverlin.
hi Tiffany.
Hi, Lila. How are you today?
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, not because divorce is a particularly positive or exciting topic, but because I know that it will help a lot of people.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely something we don't talk about enough, and we don't talk about the effects in the workplace enough, right?
Right.
So, LinkedIn, people go, oh, divorce, that's not work, whatever. But I have some stats for you to start so people can see how prevalent this is in the work industry, right?
Yeah,
In every industry.
God.
So, last year, almost 2 million people got divorced in America, which is obviously a big percentage of people. And it's estimated that every divorcee will have 5 days off work due to their divorce, at least. So you're talking about 10 million work days lost right off the bat,
Wow.
right? Which is a lot. And then they say actually there's about 30 days between whether you feel depressed, childcare issues, court appearances, not doing your whole productivity and feeling bad at work. And so you're looking at maybe 60 million days of work lost in America
Oh
last year.
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's,
That is such a tremendous number. And I had no idea that it was actually that many, but it makes sense. I don't, obviously, I don't discuss a lot of my personal relationship stuff on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people don't, which is part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, bring in an expert that I've admired, for so long and have you help us through this conversation. But it's not my first exposure to divorce and the effects on myself in the workplace. I mean, when you think about how many days go into planning your wedding and all of that stuff, and you're excited and you're getting things, you're getting fittings, you think about it in terms of the activities and things that we're excited about. And then when things start to unravel, no one even knows what those activities are unless they've been through them and really understand it. So it's very hard to get people to understand in the workplace, especially if you don't want to talk about it or you don't feel comfortable.
I mean, absolutely. And I think that that's an interesting thing, right? So I recommend, and my advice to everyone in the workplace is there is a point in your divorce you have to tell somebody, right? Because it's too heavy a load to bear. So you have to tell your HR, you have to tell your immediate boss. You don't need to tell them every gory detail and have all your dirty laundry all through your workplace, but just going to your HR person or your co-workers and saying, just so you know, I'm going through, a divorce. It's, time consuming, it's upsetting, and I'm doing the best I can right now, right?
And some people are very private, and these conversations, they don't even want to have them. But I've been that person. I've been that person at the workplace who everyone in my team, when I was at DNA Footwear, was like so on board, cheering me on when I was getting married and watching the packages come in of the paper flowers that I had ordered, asking to see pictures of the wedding dress that I wore that I had painted. And they were so part of this with me and part of my excitement. And then when things were not going well in my own marriage, that was what they remembered. And so they would ask me, oh, how's it going with you guys? And making conversation about something they thought I would be excited to talk about, but I really wasn't. And so I wanted to ask you, on the part of the coworkers, people who are in an office around people who are married, who've been married, whatever, what kind of sensitivity tools can you give to people in terms of just talking about marriage and the workplace at all? Just because I remember feeling like, gosh, I really don't want to get into this right now. I don't want to say, actually, it's not going as I thought that it would, and then get into that with especially someone who reports directly to me. I didn't want to do that.
Well, and the truth is, you don't owe anyone an explanation, right? I mean, I think human nature, we all want to know why. Why are you getting divorced, right? It's the first thing that comes out of everyone's mouth. But it's okay to just say, I'm not comfortable talking about that. You don't have to give anyone an explanation. You don't have to say anything. And as far as your coworkers who are happily married, I think it's nice to remember that we all have our personal stories.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think you need to take away from someone's excitement of planning their own wedding because you remember being there, I remember being there, because you're not feeling good about yours. In fact, I would use it the opposite way, and I would use it as a kind of propeller that feeling is still out there, right?
Nice.
That even though no matter, yeah, so even though right now you're feeling bad, but you have an 80%, I think it's 87 point something percent chance that within 3.5 years of your divorce, you will be remarried.
Oh, really? Is that a real statistic? I've never heard that before.
It's a real statistic.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so funny because people say, I am never getting married again. I'm never doing this again. I've learnt my lesson. But time heals all. And that's what you should remember when you're going through those dark moments.
I think that's probably helpful for a lot of people in more ways than we realize, even just hearing it. And some people who are listening to this are, in a similar position to mine. Not that I've gotten into too much detail, but even just being separated and not sure, what's going to happen or when things will be finalized or what your choices even will be. And you're navigating that confusion and uncertainty, having something positive like that awesome statistic that love is found again is something nice to keep in mind. And communicating with others with something positive in mind always makes us feel like we do have value to add to the conversation rather than feeling like there's so much that we have to shut down.
Absolutely. And my number one advice for all divorcees, men, women, doesn't matter who, what, where you are, is to make sure that you focus much more on what you gained from your divorce than what you've lost from your divorce. Because I think that's a very dangerous path to go down. And, a few people kind of get stuck there.
You can get very bitter.
Yeah. And we've worked with people who've been divorced 12 years and have still not let go and not moved on. And to me, that's the saddest thing of all.
It is. It's really sad to think about the bitterness. And some of these divorces get so ugly, not because of something that you're doing. Of course, everybody listening to this is perfect, right? We couldn't possibly have contributed in any way to things getting hurtful or even in ourselves being hurt or the way that we take things. But thinking long term, communicating with ourselves first as our primary communication partner and understanding our role in the story. Can you give some advice to people listening about what kind of questions they can ask themselves that would be productive, proactive, positive, rather than just thinking about all of the hurt, all of the madness? What are some practical questions we can ask ourselves?
Well, I think to start with, you can ask yourself, I'm like,
I'll mute you for a second so you can feel confident going, and I'll be the one making the sounds.
Yeah, it's really bad allergies in Florida all the time. So anyway, I think you should feel that when you think about all the things that are good, bad, and otherwise in that stage, I think you should start off by asking yourself, which is a really hard question. But once you've got through this question, you're going to feel a lot better and a lot less resentful towards your ex, is you have to examine your personal responsibility in that relationship. Everyone has some kind of personal responsibility. And yes, it's easier to just be like, it was him, it was her, they're all bad, I'm all good, I'm the victim. Mm-hmm. But long term, that's the worst thing you can do, I think. I think it's so much healthier to take a few minutes and, or days, weeks, however long it takes, and ask yourself, what was your part in that? Even if your part is just being an enabler to their poor behavior, you still have a part in the breakdown of that relationship.
That really resonates with me. I definitely feel like I was the enabler by forgiving so many things, by accepting less for myself than I really deserved for longer than I really should have. And when I found my own value again, it wasn't just about my relationship. It was, I feel that I can add more professionally. I feel that I have more to add to the world. And I started seeing my own value differently when I really asked myself what it was that I felt I deserved and why, what it was that I had in me that matched up with a greater response, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question too, right? You're asking yourself, what was your worth? Why did you accept that behavior? And really, if you kind of correct that path and understand that path that you were on and why you were on that, that's one of the most positive things you can do, because it will stop you making the same mistake in your next relationship, and it will stop you accepting that when you go back into the dating world and you realize that you're gorgeous and amazing and you have all these things going for you, right? that,
Well,
that you're not going to accept less than you deserve.
Right. Or starting to be able to notice, recognize those patterns. And when you're talking about taking responsibility, I think asking yourself, what was my part? Maybe what could I have done differently to have either a different outcome that was positive for the relationship, or at the very least, what could I have done to preserve my own value and to protect myself and my needs in this marriage? So just in terms of having yourself as your primary communication partner first, what role does that have in then being able to talk about it to others?
Well, I think it's really powerful, right? The more knowledge you have and the more understanding you have, especially of yourself and how you operate and why you accepted less and what you want in the future, the more power you have going back out into the universe, whether it's at work, whether it's in relationships, whether it's, closing deals, whatever it is. You just feel so empowered that you have a kind of handle and a grip on who you are, and what you want. And so you can't put a value on that. I mean, I think that's one of the strongest things that come out of divorce. I've never seen anyone, and I'm sure you're a shining example of this, who hasn't come out of their divorce better, stronger, wiser, right?
I'm not even, I don't even have a finalized divorce. I have papers over here, confusion over here. What do I want in my life over here? Heartbreak, reinvestment of my heart. It's not even like anything I've completely resolved for myself yet. And I wonder if there are other people that you know of who feel like the uncertainty, the self-doubt, the bitterness, the regret. I mean, so much regret has held them back in some way from being able to love fully again, or even to talk about it, because I know it feels like the unfinishedness, the lack of closure feels for me like a weight, and also like this reminder constantly that I could have, should have, would have, whatever those things are. What have you seen being the results of carrying this with you? What are the negative results of that?
Well, carrying that is heavy, right? You carry it for a few days, it's a burden. You carry it for a lifetime, it's a miserable life. And so you don't want to do that. I mean, you are now on the stage that you just told me, which I didn't know. You're not actually divorced. I've never met anyone in the history of mankind who really feels like they have it all under control until they have that piece of paper. And there's something like metaphysical about that piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper.
But it's impossible.
Yeah.
I was listening to you talk about the days off from work, and I work for myself, but flying, to another state to deal with things, or going to a court, and then you realize you have to pay in this certain way, with just cash or something, or with a law firm check, or whatever it is for processing fees, or your ID isn't the right kind of thing, and then you have to go back and do it all again, and all the time off just for admin and logistics alone. But then the time that you mentioned in terms of being depressed or having that self-doubt, the time it takes to address a question that enters our minds about ourselves, our worth, our value, how much we have it all together, or whatever, that kind of stuff takes away time from our productivity as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you can lose yourself in your own mind, right? I don't think anyone on the planet understands how much work divorce is until you do it. I mean, you touched on some things, admin, flying court, all the things you don't know. I mean, getting divorced is a full-time job. And when you're a working person, God forbid, a working parent on top of that, you are dealing with It's like if somebody went up to you and said, hey, you have to take on a whole full-time job. You have to restructure your entire children's custody, right? You have to redo your entire finances, and you have to sell your house and move your house in the next 30 days and then go for it. Right?
I mean, it's so much of the stuff, like the stuff to do, the stuff to go through. And so communicating about this in the workplace, do you feel like people have a right to ask for extra concessions or to ask for extra support? And do people feel differently when they're asking for support for things like caring for a child, caring for an aging or unwell parent or family member? When they have to take time off to do these things, is there a different feeling, maybe connected to shame or other negative feelings, when they have to ask for support to actually take time to deal with these things, both metaphysical and spiritual and administrative?
Absolutely. I mean, there absolutely is a divorce stigma, right? Absolutely. And there are some horrific, and I don't need to tell you, all you have to do is turn on the news every day. There are some horrific statistics tied to divorce. It's estimated that more murders and suicide have divorce as their number one factor than anything else in America. And part of that problem and that equation is that feeling that you can't ask for support because it's not really bad enough, right? You know, someone dies, you're okay doing that. Your kid is sick, you're okay doing that. But divorce, people blame yourself. They say, oh, that's something you did, right? And then you carry that guilt, you carry that shame, you carry that, whether it's religious beliefs or family beliefs or whatever's ingrained in you society-wise. And it's just such a detriment to everyone. But I and many other people out there are trying to change that, right? We're trying to say to people, we don't advocate divorce, but if you're going to do divorce, do it healthily. Don't feel shame and guilt about it. And yes, absolutely ask for help. Ask for help in your workplace, ask for help with your friends, ask for help with your family. You haven't done anything wrong.
Right. Well, but I want to ask you for some specific things that people can say when they ask for help coming up. And I also want to ask you about that process. Now that you know that you should be talking about it, you should be asking for help, and that you are under no circumstances obliged to tell other people if you're very private about it. You can just say, I'm not comfortable talking about that. Certainly people will move on after that. But I want to take a moment because we are live right now as we're recording this. And we have a friend of mine, Bill, who wrote a comment on our live stream on LinkedIn. He said, this isn't just uncomfortable for women. Men feel like they have to have a strong personality and hide the pain. I think that's probably true of a lot of people in leadership positions, regardless of whether they're a man or a woman. But certainly there is an extra stigma around men going through something that is emotional. And so before we go on to how to ask for help and how to communicate through the divorce with your partner and other people, can you address that, just about men in the workplace and dealing with emotions around the feelings of loss or shame in a divorce?
First of all, Bill, you are not alone. 50% of our users at DreamsRecycled are men, and they have been men since day one, which I did not expect even. I had no idea until I started doing this. And male clients and male users are people we love helping because Bill is correct. They get the least amount of help of everyone. And they are also the most uncomfortable asking for help and admitting that there's something wrong. And so I really, really, really highly suggest men, you don't have to tell your best friend. You don't have to tell your coworkers, but find somebody to tell, right? Find a support group, find people like me, find a therapist, find whoever can support you. I've talked to men and they've actually connected with somebody at work that they've never connected with before.
Really?
Who has been divorced, and they've, worked up the courage at the water cooler to say, hey, I know you went through a bad divorce a few years ago, so am I, right? Because just having that validation that it isn't only you is so important and such a strong emotion. And so I really encourage all men to get as much help as women get, and to not feel shameful, etc., about the process either, because there isn't always a bad guy and a good guy. It's much more that we're just humans and we're the best we can.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you said that we're all doing the best that we can, because it takes away the pressure of doing something perfectly. There's a reason why I called my method and company Say Things Better, right? Like, rather than say things perfectly, we're never going to get everything perfect. We're never going to get everything right. But one of the things that we can do in order to get better in ourselves, communicate better with others, is to ask for help. So that was a good example of somebody at a water cooler saying, hey, I know that you went through a rough divorce. I'm going through this now. Would you be open to speaking with me? What are some other things that people can say, like the actual words that they might use in opening these conversations with HR, with a peer, with their direct reports, or with their boss?
I think honesty is the best policy, right? So you can go directly to your HR boss or HR person and say, I just want you to know that I am going through a divorce and I am doing the best I can, but some days are a struggle. Simple. And if you have an HR boss who then says that's not acceptable and likes rants and raves at you, I would find another job.
I totally agree.
Because that's not a good environment. That's not a healthy environment to be in. If you're not in a situation at work with your company that you are supported through any adversity, because let's face it, there's a lot of adversities for all of us. There's sickness, divorce, death, a million other things. You want to be working for a company who has empathy, who has a culture that is supportive and where they appreciate you and understand that we are humans and things happen.
There is something that's going on now, because at the time of recording this conversation, we're going through a global pandemic with COVID-19 in the year 2020. This has been going on for months. And what's interesting, one of many things that's interesting about all of this is just the human experience being so condensed and compacted. We are seeing more than ever who people are when they're under pressure, and not just individuals, which of course is leading to more divorce than ever, but companies. You get to see who a company is. Like, how do they live up to their alleged values when under pressure? When people are having to work differently, when people are having to make allowances for each other and for different variables than they ever have before, you're going to see who people are in your life during times of stress and pressure. So whether that's a global pandemic or your own personal divorce, it is another positive thing to come out of these crazy circumstances that you never imagined you would be in.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the best things about divorce. It's a natural human color, right? It culls all the people that should not be in your life, whether it's jobs, whether it's family members, whether it's friends. Some people will act like divorce is contagious, right? Like, they were your best friend, you were going out as a couple, they don't know what it's about, and they just run away from you. Well, why would you want them in your life anyway? And I have made, by far, I think some of the best friends in my entire life since my divorce, because it really does show you the kind of people are, right? It's easy to be with you when everything is great and you have the perfect husband and the perfect kids and the perfect house and everything's perfect, but who's going to be there when things aren't so perfect?
Right. Or if you need extra support, or you need to reach out for something, like, I need someone to watch my kid for 5 minutes while I take this quick phone call with a lawyer, or while I wait on hold, just somebody to help, to actually pitch in with the things, the extra load of work that you're now dealing with, or an emotional load. The people who do show up for you in times of stress in your life, whether that's divorce, dealing with a death in the family, your own depression, or other issues, those people who step up, to value them and invest back into them even more than you ever have before. So I totally agree that it's one of those amazing upsides to trauma, is that you get to see who those people are who are going to really be with you for the long haul.
Absolutely. And hold on to those people. because
Yeah.
they can last through, your next marriage and your next whatever it is, right? We want those people with us.
So when you're communicating through the beginnings of a divorce, thinking about the people in your life who are not, and we'll get to speaking to the partner that you are separating from, there are people in your life that you are going to want to address this with. And I liked what you said before, that honesty is the best policy, and keeping it simple just to test out what the response is. Hey, I wanted to let you know, because you're important to me, that I'm going through a tough time. I'm going through a separation. I'm going through a divorce. And then you can either, and you can say, and I don't really want to talk about it, but I'm letting you know that it's happening. Or you can say, and what I could really use from you is, and that's one of the things that I really advise people when they are going through anything. I mean, when they're going through a tough time at work because they can't handle the workload, or you need someone to provide you with a reference or recommendation, or you need somebody to make a meal for you, asking for help in a specific way empowers the person that you have a relationship with to take action that feels supportive. So I recommend to people that if you're talking to a friend whom you know is really good at doing research, that you ask them, one thing that I could use support in is researching custody laws in the state that we live in. Can you help me with learning what kind of questions I should ask of a lawyer? Or if you have a friend who's a really good cook, you might want to ask that friend, I would really appreciate it. The kind of help that I could use right now is just taking some things off my plate. And if you wouldn't mind just making a meal for me and my kids one day in the month of June, that would really help. So being specific in those requests of the different people in our lives.
Absolutely. And that's a great advice for any adverse situation, right? If you have somebody who's sick or somebody who's lost a family member, I mean, actionable steps are much more helpful than, prayer and thoughts, right? This doesn't really help us.
Some people might feel that prayer is something that they want, that makes them feel good. And so for those people that want to bond in that way, it's useful. But without asking for some kind of other actionable advice, you're really giving people no other way to offer support than to just say, I'm offering good vibes, I'm praying for you, I'm sending love. And that is valuable, but it is only helpful, so much. Because
it's thoughtful. Yeah, it's thoughtful and nice.
It's thoughtful and nice, and it doesn't put food on the table or make the load any less heavy. It does feel emotionally lighter when you're sharing a burden with multiple close partners in your life, but it doesn't actually reduce the workflow of your life and the things that have to get done. And it doesn't make that person feel personally and specifically valued, as it does when you say, I recognize you for having expertise as a divorce coach, counselor, and the CEO founder of DreamsRecycled. In that capacity, would you have this conversation with me and share it? So asking people specifically for something that you recognize as a strength in them strengthens those relationships around you at a time you really need them more than ever, and shows people that you know what they are valuable for and why you value them in your life.
Absolutely. And I wanted to, you said before, which was about your friends helping you with legal things.
Yes.
So yeah, if you have a friend who's great at research, sure, put them to it. But the one thing that a lot of people make the mistake of, and if you are just not a divorcee and you're just listening to this, be aware, one of the worst things that people do, and they do it under the guise of being helpful because they think they're being helpful, is they tell you stories of either their divorce or someone else's awful divorce story. Right.
And people who are recovering from cancer, right? They're like, oh, I know someone who died from that.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Absolutely. And so I want to say, caution you all, even though you're trying to, show empathy and understanding and share knowledge. This is when we talk to our users and clients, they say, I have a friend who keeps telling me this, that, and the other, or I have a friend who got everything. I had a friend who got nothing. And divorce is so case specific that there's no way you should be listening to these stories. Ask your lawyer for actual, facts and figures in your state and in your case. And the rest of it, kind of tune out. And if people are doing this, you can politely ask them to stop. I don't find this helpful when you tell me other people's stories. It just makes me feel more stressed.
I think that's great advice and really helpful. Obviously, people don't know all of this stuff. You provide a lot of resources on Dreams Recycled that I'd love to get to, and just help people for a moment before we go on to the conversations with your partner from whom you are separating, and then eventually with your kids, and handling the stickier stuff. Can you just take a few moments to explain what Dreams Recycled is, why you came up with this, what you offer, and how people can find you?
We're at DreamsRecycled.com, and we're at Dreams Recycled everywhere, whether it's Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, you can find us. Dreams Recycled, I started after my own divorce, which is, I think, how many people start their companies, through kind of a mixture of passion and necessity. And I couldn't find anything. Everywhere I went online was so ridiculously dismal that I was like, thinking, okay, my life is over, right? I'm getting divorced. This is awful. And so I created Dreams Recycled as a safe place and a community for people to do many things. They can do many things in there. Firstly, they can sell their items from their divorce, which I think is very powerful because it lets go in a physical sense. What we were saying before, the difference between practical things and thoughtful things. So that's something practically anyone can do. You can sell your sofa, you can sell your bed, you can sell your ring, your dress, whatever. And once those things physically have left your life, I believe that they've created more space in your life for new things, new people. And who wants to live in the ashes of your past relationships, if you think about it like that? We also We also have a directory of resources, so you can find, anything from lawyers to movers to whatever you need on a practical sense. And we have my favorite parts, which are the articles. We have thousands of free articles, podcasts, where you can get all this information and so much more on anything and everything, from parenting to finances to insurance, doesn't matter, we have it. And lastly, we have the community where divorcees can connect with each other in real terms and get the support they need. Because I have never, ever met a divorcee who would not help another divorcee.
I think that's true of survivors of a lot of different kinds of traumatic experiences. And there's no divorce that doesn't come with some element of trauma, because it is the opposite of your original intention for that relationship. So of course there's an element of trauma for everybody, even for people who are getting along really well. And you think like, oh, this will be super simple, until that one moment that you go and you have to sign a paper that says, remember all those promises I made? Actually, no, take my name off of all of those things. And so even for people who think that they have it all together, who are very pragmatic and working through things, one at a time, going down a list, they feel great, they feel hopeful, maybe they've even moved on in a new relationship. There still is an element of trauma for everybody who goes through this. So having those resources all in one place must be so valuable. Can you share a story of somebody who has used your site and some feedback that you've gotten about it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the part that makes me feel uncomfortable because I'm not like a bragger by nature, but
that's why you're on my channel talking about it, because I'm going to make you.
We've helped over 10 million divorcees, which blows my mind. I can't even believe it. I thought if I helped like 10, I'd be good. And we've helped them through information, through education, but most importantly, we've helped them through hope. And so sharing our message and sharing our story. And my personal story, I mean, I've had clients go on and practically all my clients have gone on and got remarried, even though the current ones don't believe this, but they will. I've had them have twins, go on crazy round the world trips, climb mountains that they've always wanted to do, buy their first home, which I love everyone who's done that. I mean, that's something you really feel proud that someone's gone on from a situation, especially if it was an abusive situation. So those are probably to me the closest to my heart. Like I like, you know, in the back cheering for them like mad. And I just think it's really that piece of hope that people understand, no matter how bad this is, it will get better.
I think that's a beautiful thing for people to share as they're sharing this conversation and learning how to speak with people who are going through a divorce, how to support them. You've given so many great statistics, but also just that feeling of there is hope, and having that kind of attitude when supporting people who are going through the hardest thing that they, you know, maybe in many cases have ever gone through before. Giving people that you're supporting who are going through a divorce that feeling of hope is just priceless. Do you have resources on DreamsRecycled.com for people who are supporting others who are going through a divorce?
Yeah, we have a community area. They can connect. They can join individual groups that are more specific to them, whether it's same-sex marriage or whether it's divorcing a narcissist or parenting, or parenting or blended families. I mean, because the nice thing about Dreams Recycled, and I think generally what we do, is the arc of divorce is really, really long. People think, oh, divorce is just a month or a week or a few months or a year. Divorce is forever. And so divorce is ever changing. And so it's, you know, at the beginning, it's all legal stuff and emotional stuff. And then you get through that. And then maybe one of you goes on to get remarried. One of you gets re-engaged. And now you're blending families. And now you need blended family advice. And so it's something where we really, you know, encourage people to kind of keep checking back there, because there's something new all the time that's going to happen to you through your divorce, where you can get more information and more resources and get that kind of support.
I'm a child of divorce, or really, I guess, like a teenager of divorce, because I think I was 14 or 15 when my parents divorced, and my mother is watching live right now. So I'm aware of that. But also, Mom, Tiffany says hi. She's waving at the camera. I'm dealing now, 20 years later, with some of the things that I never realized I was experiencing at the time, in terms of how I filter my own relationships or what kind of effort level I'm willing to put in. I think that there were times that I was judging my parents as a 14, 15-year-old and saying, like, if only they could have worked harder or done things, without really fully understanding what was going on, because my parents were doing their best to communicate with me. But I was also, I was a kid, a teenager, but a kid, and my brother was even younger. And we were not able to grasp all of the details, nor did they want to share all of those things with us. But still, I was left then to tell myself stories about how else things could have been, one way or the other. And those stories became reality for me. And so later in life, I'm seeing that I am putting effort after effort after effort into relationships that are not going to work out. Because the truth is that there is no saving every single relationship, that divorce sometimes is the healthiest option. And now I'm grateful to my parents for making a tough decision, for saying we're better apart co-parenting than we are in this marriage, fighting around our kids. And so as that young kid, as this person now, I'll say that arc of divorce, it is forever. Things do keep coming up. We still learn things about ourselves and about each other in a family when the whole family is affected. So I really appreciate you calling that out and validating that the arc is so long. I think things will continue to come up forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it sounds like your parents did the right thing, right? I don't advise parents give their teenagers a blow-by-blow account of everything that happened. I mean, because just doing that, A, it's not appropriate for children. B, it kind of usually will put blame on one parent or the other. And no parents should be going out of the way to alienate the other or make the other guy the bad guy or the bad girl or whatever it is. I mean, it's just not healthy. So it sounds like your parents did the right thing. The only thing The only thing I would say is, when your children get to an older level, whether 18, 21, depends on maturity, and you have that close relationship with your parents, at that point, it's not a bad idea to have a little sit down, as uncomfortable as it is, and say, you know what, there was more to this story. We did could as a parent during that time. We tried to shield you from it because you weren't old enough to understand it. But now, moving forward, before you get married, before you go out into the world, I want you to know the truth of what happened.
I think that's a really powerful idea. I think that's a really powerful idea, that we can revisit conversations later, that not everything has to happen at once, that not everyone will always be mature enough or even deserving enough to be part of all of the details of your personal journey of something. And when kids are concerned, it is very easy for them to take a story, remember it as fact, and then distrust another parent, which then breaks down all kinds of things for them later. So sometimes it's going to be based on the kid and where they are, what your relationship is. But I really like that practical idea of having more conversations later, unpacking things as maturity grows, as relationships change, and as relevance changes as well. If something comes up that a parent notices in their child, they can say, let me share some more details with you at that time.
Absolutely. Because there are a lot of people, you were saying about, trying to make a relationship work where it's a round peg in a square hole, and you're just like, beating it and it's not working and there's no good coming out of any of it. And I think that going back to that no good guy, bad guy, I think people lose sight of the fact that you can be a very good parent, but not a very good mother. Not a very good wife, or not a very good husband, right?
Or to that one person, you might not be like the right couple.
Right. And so I think that that's really important. And I see a lot of that with the clients. Unfortunately, a lot of parents go down the wrong path at the beginning, and it's hard for them to get off that path where they vilified one of the parents because they cheated, they left, they did, X, Y, Z, whatever. And it's very difficult for them to get down, off this path. But I think it's important to remember that the relationship you have with your children, the relationship your child has with your other parent, and the relationship your child has with you is what is going to help them grow into a healthy, productive adult, which is what we all want, right? Well, we should all want that.
Yes.
And so we're doing damage to our children when you vilify one of them for what they've done to you, when they haven't necessarily done anything to the child.
Right. Or if they have, vilifying them is not going to get them into a better, more productive space, as much as finding some way to collaborate or even to draw some kind of boundaries and to start to enforce them, maybe for the first time ever in your relationship. So let's get into some of the things that you can do, some communication outlines or points to check ourselves on as we navigate a divorce that we are a part of. So talking with your spouse as you separate, as you move towards divorce, obviously there's hurt involved in most cases of divorce, and that can infiltrate our communication and cause us to be sort of like the lowest level communicator that we are, because we feel so hurt that we feel entitled to injure someone else. And can you explain what the results of that might be and what a different approach is?
Yeah, I was going to start by saying the same thing. It is very hard. We are not robots. We are emotional beings. It's very hard to be hurt by someone and not want to retaliate, hurt back, do something vengeful, spiteful, mean, whatever. It's just, that's kind of our DNA, isn't it? Someone hurts us, we want to hurt them, right? So I think it's okay. You start by acknowledging that's how you feel. But then you explain to yourself why you should not act out on any of those things, right? That, whether you're the one who wants the divorce or the one who doesn't want the divorce, because most time it's like that. Sometimes it's both of you, which makes it easier. But a lot of times it's one who wants out and one is kind of holding on for dear life, whether they really still want to be married or they're just so fearful they can't let go. And so I would say that your first thing is to acknowledge that you feel bad, acknowledge that you have these feelings, but go through your mind, why it's not healthy to act out on them. Because this is someone...
An example of something that you go through in your mind. What are some reasons why, or one of your own, or someone that you've seen? Can you tell a story about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think let's go to the cheating story. I mean, that's just such a prevalent story, right? So it's so hurtful when people have committed adultery, you had affairs in marriage, and especially if it appears that they are leaving you for somebody else, right? Or due to this person. And then obviously that's very traumatic. Obviously you have a right to be angry, you have a right to be sad, you have a right to be mad, all these things. But then you have to take a deep breath, right? Because no bad ever comes of being the bigger person. This is something.
I love that. Please say that again, because that was just, that's a quotable moment.
Yeah. No, it's always better to be the bigger person. Nothing bad will ever come from being the bigger person. It just won't. And you have to think about moving forward that, especially if you have children. I mean, if you don't have children, divorce maybe isn't forever. You can literally cut these people out of your life. But divorce with children is forever. You're going to have you're going to have weddings, you're going to have high school graduations, you're going to have college ceremonies, you're going to have grandchildren. However you start, you are setting yourself up for how your life will be. And I am all for a peaceful life. Anything that you can do to not have drama in your life, to have a peaceful life, to be that kind of person who understands that nothing is always perfect and people will wrong you, but you just feel so much better about yourself, your life, your family, your future, if you know there's not drama around every single corner you're going into. And so
drama, I think is a very strong and powerful word, and can mean a lot of different things to different people. So some people may hear, and this is totally accurate in many conditions, that drama means you end up squabbling, arguing over the coleslaw at a picnic, at a family event. But drama can also mean that you feel re-traumatized every time you see someone, or every time, let's say your spouse's name is Jennifer and somebody else you just meet is named Jennifer. Every time you hear the name Jennifer, now you're re-traumatized. That can be dramatic also. So Tiffany, what are some benefits to healing from that trauma in embracing instead the long-term peace?
Well, it's endless. The benefits are endless, right? You asked for a specific story. So we've had many clients who are in such battles decades, 5, 10 years, 15 years later with their exes, that they literally can't go to their own children's graduation and be in the same room. Their poor bride of the wedding is trying to figure out her wedding, trying to figure out how she can do it twice. Right? Twice. Think about how awful that must be. Right? Expensive too. But that she can't get married in front of both her parents at once. That's how bad some people will go. They'll go down that path. And so my next quotable moment is going to be, you should always love your children more than you hate your ex.
That's fair.
If you do not, you need to go to therapy and fix that. You need to find a therapist, a coach, a psychologist, someone to help you, because holding on to that anger and hate, holding on to that is just so unhealthy for you. And it's just really, really detrimental to everything moving forward. You don't have to be best friends with your ex, but if you physically cannot be in a room with them, you need to get help.
I think that's you talked earlier in this episode about personal responsibility. And personal responsibility doesn't only mean that you had a role in the success or failure, or whatever better words there are than success and failure when it comes to a marriage. But you also have a personal responsibility in the aftermath when something's not going well. The facts are what they are. The marriage is over. That's why there is divorce. And if you can simply move on with the facts of, this is the case, whether I chose it or not, this is the case. So from here, what responsibility can I take to make sure that I have a peaceful life, that I heal, that I am my best and most highly valued self, that I'm communicating to myself with love, that I pull help in. Just recapping some of the points we went over in this episode so far that are so high value. And I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart for coming on and talking about this for people who it's a very taboo subject, but these are practical things that you can do to approach divorce from a place of empathy for yourself, for your children, and even for your partner, for whoever hurt you, for whoever has left you or harmed you in some way or traumatized you. If you can find a way to give and take responsibility from this point forward, it's over, now what? So what are some of the things that people can do or say to a partner and help them communicate with their family or their friends or be a partner in raising this child together when it is so acrimonious and high levels of stress when communicating with each other? What can they do to de-escalate a situation and move forward from a place of productivity? Oh, I'm sorry. I think you're muted. Let me unmute you. Okay, go ahead.
No, I think some of the hot spots for that is the power of forgiveness. You know, if you can kind of conjure up the kind of inner strength to go to your spouse, no matter how bad they've been, you know, what they've done to you, whatever they've said to you, or whatever, you know, damage they've inflicted onto you, just physically saying the words, "I am choosing to forgive you." Right. And I put the word choosing in there because it is a choice. It's a choice we all have. And the power of forgiveness is huge. And it's not anything to do with the ex or anything to do with what they've done. It's to do with relieving that negativity from you and letting that go. And so you automatically feel more, you know, more lighter basically by letting that anger go. And then, you know, no matter what your ex does, because remember, we have no power over other people's behaviors, right? We only have ours. We've done things to help us. So we've forgiven. We've tried to be the bigger person. We've put our children first. And there's a lot of, you know, good nights of sleep come out of those three things, right?
I'm muted now. Thank you. I think that there are a lot of benefits to forgiveness and to good nights of sleep, you know, for sure. Lots of sleepless nights when you're going through something traumatizing like divorce. I love those words. I am choosing to forgive you. One, because it acknowledges that it is not easy to forgive. And it acknowledges you have caused me pain. And it doesn't just immediately let them off the hook, but it also takes responsibility. And it opens up for that other partner, the one who hurt you, the one who whatever, I am choosing to forgive you. It gives that person the opportunity also to have a clean slate and to drop some of their defensiveness, that they feel they're about to be attacked or reprimanded or, you know, scolded forever for every time that they see you, every time that they talk to you, knowing that you're going to talk down to them about how badly they treated you. They're not going to want to be in productive conversations with you. So opening up with, I am choosing to forgive you. Here's what that means for me. And here's what I hope that will look like and what kind of goals we can set together. I think that's a beautiful thing to say and very powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely, because there's massive power, right? He who reacts less wins. And I use that a lot with my clients. And that's because that's true. Any reaction proves to your ex, proves to the world around you that you have not let go, that you are still allowing someone else to affect your mood, your happiness, your behavior. And isn't that the ultimate win for them? That if you can't move on and you can't be happy and you can't let it go, that just tells your ex day after day after day that they've won.
Right.
And
or the ultimate win for you would be that you get to move on. You get to heal. The ultimate win for you is not a loss for them. A loss for somebody else is never the highest win for us. I come from a theater background. When we choose our intentions in every scene for our character, and we are responsible for setting that objective. What is it that my character wants in this one scene right now? And we go and relentlessly pursue that objective. So even if we're playing a villain, that objective is almost never hurt that other person. It's always something positive that we feel we will gain as a result. The hurting is never the thing. The benefit that we receive is always the thing. So remembering that everybody will have their own objective, their own thing that makes them feel better in their own lives, that's really the win. That's what we should all be going after. So Tiffany, before we wrap up, I want you to share what some of the wins are. What are some of the wins that can be expected from communicating positively through divorce with your partner, with the people around you? What are the wins that we can expect ourselves in communicating with intention through divorce?
Well, the wins are endless. You have a personal win. You feel better about yourself. You have more self-confidence. You sleep better at night. You're altogether more optimistic. As far as your children have a peaceful, calmer, happier life without turmoil, without, they know that the mom and dad still don't like each other, that they can't be in the same room, that when it's their birthday party and all they want is them to be there, that they can't have that, right? So that's how your children win. And you win because I don't know anyone who's attractive to a negative person, right? If you want to go on and find love again and date again or whatever, being optimistic, being happy, not having all that baggage you're carrying with you is the ultimate win, because nobody wants to move forward in a relationship with someone and feel like they're constantly paying for the sins of their ex. Who wants a relationship?
Good point. Like I hadn't even thought about that, but I guess as I do, I'm thinking if I were to ever date somebody different, what would that conversation feel like in the beginning of something? What would I be open to? I think most people in their lives are looking for someone who will add to what they have in their lives, rather than opening from a place of bitterness, from a place of negativity. Because when somebody observes you communicating even about a past relationship from such a place of hurt, negativity, anger, they start to fear, I think that's only natural, that in this relationship with you, that's what you're going to be like when there's anything that goes wrong. Because there's extrapolating, you extrapolate anything that's your experience from the beginning of a new relationship. So you say, okay, they always chew with their mouth full, which means that I'm looking forward to like a life of looking at the inside of their mouth, and they're talking and you get crumbs everywhere. And am I really up for that forever? And then when you apply that to negative communication and putting someone else down, do they want to sign up for a life where they might be the other person that you're talking to? I think that's such a good point.
Absolutely. And that's a red flag. I mean, we won't get into this now, but dating after divorce, that's a massive red flag. If you go on a date with someone and all they do is badmouth their ex, I don't care if they're, the ex committed adultery with the entire Orlando Magic. Nobody cares, right? You don't want to hear that.
I want to hear that.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that. And so, that's a big red flag. People, it's okay when you get to know them if they tell you a little bit about what happened. But if they're just, got this spewing of vengeance and spite and hatred towards their ex still, this is not someone healthy to move on to a relationship with.
Right. It seems like there's sort of a fullness of their fridge, right? You open the door and you're like, oh, I've got all these pies. You want them? I'll put them in it's full. Imagine somebody bringing all of their goodies to your house, trying to put them in the fridge, and it's full of your bitterness. It doesn't feel like you have the openness and space in your life for somebody who wants to add even some sweetness. So wrapping up, I just want to say thank you so much, Tiffany, for your incredible generosity in sharing your wisdom and experience. Amazing that you've been able to help over 10 million divorcees or people who are going through the process and being supported by them. I think what you do is incredible. And as we wrap up, would you just please remind people where they can go to get more information about you and Dreams Recycled and what you do?
You're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. Especially, I get a lot of requests, so especially if you put divorce as your subject title, I will be sure, because I never ignore anyone who needs help with their divorce. Put that as your title, and I personally will do the best on LinkedIn to help. And if you want to go to DreamsRecycled.com and check out the website and all the resources, we would love to see you there.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to following you myself on the social media platforms that I've missed, which I think I'm pretty sure I'm following you on Instagram, but I'm going to go and make sure, because everything that you say is so inspirational and really backed up by statistics and facts and figures and real people with their real stories. Anybody who's going through a traumatic transition can stand to benefit from the content that you share on LinkedIn, on other social media platforms, and at DreamsRecycled.com. So thank you again so much. I hope that you and I continue to stay in touch and stay connected. If our listeners or viewers are seeing this later, put a comment below, and if you're not comfortable because you don't want to go public with it, send a message to me or to Tiffany or both, and let us know what your thoughts are, what came up for you as a result of this. And if you have any communication questions moving forward, let us know. We will both help. Thanks so much. Bye, Tiffany. Bye, everyone.